Hello beauties, I hope you're doing fabulous. Today I'm gonna do a requested video. We are going to try to find dupes for Baubles and Lucid Lavendar. Baubles is from Glaminatrix, Lucid Lavendar is from Touch of Glam. If that sounds good to you and you enjoy these kinds of videos, give this video a thumbs up and let's jump in. I have a lot of shades that fall into the category of light blue base with a teal to gold to magenta shift, but even within that category, you can have different varieties of depth of shifts or vibrancy of shifts and so on. But these that I've identified are the closest dupes. I also wanted to tell you all that the purpose of these videos, separate from just the fun of it, is to inspire you to buy less dupe of shades. There's no point, unless you have a channel or unless you're a makeup artist, I suppose, to have exact dupes of shades. It's like essentially buying multiples of shades. There's no point in that. All of these things have an expiration date, and before you know it, they're going to start smelling and you're going to have to throw them away. So the goal of these videos is to save the money you would have possibly spent on a dupe so that you can, if you want in the future, spend it on a new shade that is going to bring value to your collection. So without further ado, let's jump into swatching. Our first shade is obviously Baubles from Glaminatrix. And hopefully you can see on the screen that this shade goes from a gorgeous, gorgeous bluey teal shift to a gold shift. And then from the other angle, you go into a very light magenta shift. Later in the video, I'm going to show you all of the shades swatched on my arm under different lighting. Our next shade, which I consider kind of a dupe for Baubles, is I Need Vitamin C from Touch of Glam. The difference though is that the texture of this collection is very flaky. So perhaps the best application would be on a tacky base. But as you can see, you have more or less the same tealy shift, maybe even purpley from some angles. Although this shade is a little bit more teal than Baubles, going into a gold and then going into a very similar magenta shift on the other end. Although this shade's shift is a tad bit more cool toned purple than magenta pink. Another potential dupe that I found for Baubles is Cosmos, one of my favorites from Terra Moons. Maybe I should call it the Cosmos because that's what it's on the shade. And as you can see, this one is also going from teal to gold to light pink magenta on the other end. Now, frankly, I believe that from more than an arm's length, it would be very difficult for someone to be able to tell the difference between these shades if you apply them on your eyes. That among these three, Cosmos looks like it has the most creamy texture. Let's do Sugar Coated as our next shade. This is from MBA Cosmetics. I believe this was from the Sugar Bus collection. You can see the teal shift, but it's significantly less prominent than these other ones. And then of course you can see the magenta shift on the other end, but again, it's less prominent than the other ones. And this is what they look like on my hand. But regardless, they are pretty similar. Do you need all of these shades? I highly doubt that you do. The next shade that I want to swatch that could possibly be a dupe is Palamen from Divina. This shade is from their Mystic Cuff collection, so if you have that palette, this shade is in there. And as you can see, the shifts are very, very similar among this shade as well with all the other shades, going teal to gold to light pink. The next shade that I identified as a potential dupe is Diadem from Cleona. This one is from the Glitter Vibrant collection of Cleona. And although it has all the shifts, you can see that it has a lot more prominent teal shift than these other shades. In fact, if we were to compare it, at least from my angle, directly with Baubles, Baubles from my angle looks more gold looking this way, and Diadem looks a lot more just teal, but it does have all of those shifts. Can someone really tell the difference between them from afar? I don't think so. And the last shade that I want to swatch that I think can be considered a dupe is Big Dipper. Now this one has a little bit more green in it than all these other shades. As you can see, the teal is a lot more green than it is blue. And it is missing that blue shift that Baubles and some of these other closer dupes have. But it does also go teal to gold, and from the other angle to a very light muted magenta. Now, this one has a much more muted magenta than these other shades from my angle. Continuing with a few shades that I was wondering if they are dupes, starting with Glaminatrix's Cornflower. Even in the pan, you can see that this one has a very prominent deep purple shift. When you look at the pan, you don't see a blue shade, which was the case with all of those other shades. But for the sake of comparison, I'm going to swatch this also. Cornflower is one of my favorites. And you can see that the shifts are not the same at all. In fact, the shade is very, very different because of that purple undertone. I have identified a few dupes for this shade that we're going to talk about in a different video. One of them is this one. It's a hit from Glam Shop. I have swatched it on my finger just to show you that this is not at all similar to these shades and that it has a purple undertone, because I don't have enough room on my hand to swatch everything. But if you want to see dupes of this, let me know. I'll make that video. Another one that I thought you all might be wondering about was Stellar Apotheosis from Terra Moons. And this shade, although it might look like it is a dupe, it actually is not. Its most prominent shift is bronze, as you can see, not a gold. Its gold shift is kind of mixed with green and is not that prominent. And of course, also the texture is very flaky. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous shade. And frankly, someone could argue this is even more pretty than Baubles, but it's just not really a dupe. And beauties, I also found a few dupes for this shade. If you want to see me swatch them, let me know. And some of these also stain my hand, as you can see. Another one that I want to swatch it against is Bloom 2, also from Glaminatrix. This shade has a very different texture from all of these. It's a lot more creamy, not as bright. It's a lot more diffused. And also that it's missing all of those shifts, at least from this angle. So although it's a beautiful shade, it's definitely not even close to being a dupe. And now the critical question that was also asked, is Lucid Lavendar a dupe? So let's swatch that one also. Now the reason I swatched Bloom 2 is to show you that Lucid Lavendar could actually be a dupe for Bloom 2. In terms of textures and the shifts, they are very, very similar. If I layer this swatch a little more, you'll see that they have very, very similar shifts from different angles. You can see the teal, you can see the magenta, you can see the purple. So definitely not a dupe for these, but definitely a dupe for Bloom 2. Meaning, if you have Bloom 2 already from Glaminatrix, you probably don't need to pick up Lucid Lavendar. Again, beauties, I'm going to show you all the swatches from different angles and lighting in a minute. And now that I did that, let me also just swatch Lucid Holo. This, frankly, is one of the most uninteresting holographic shades. I bought this around the time it released, which was a few years ago, and I'm hoping that Touch of Glam has upped its game on the hollow front. It's definitely a holographic shade, but I wouldn't call it that exciting. We have a lot more multichromy holographic shades nowadays that just pop up in palettes and are way cheaper than these. And frankly, I don't even see the shifts that I see in the Lucid Lavendar in the holographic shade. It has a mild shift from different angles, but I would not call this a multichrome in 2024 with all the funky shades that we see nowadays. I'm gonna now swatch a few more shades just to show you comparisons. These shades are not dupes, but I was wondering if there are any dupes among them, which I identified that there are not. And I thought some of you might be wondering also, so let's swatch them. This one is Blue Lagoon from Luxie. This shade has a beautiful sky blue base. It does have an overtone of very, very light pink, but I would call it duochrome if anything, and even that is a stretch. Definitely not a dupe for these. I don't see magenta, I don't see teal. Our next one is a beautiful shade from Pretties for Your Face that a friend sent me. This one is Water Nymph, and it is a beautiful, beautiful shade, just not a dupe. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous shade, as you can see, and it does have a lot of different shifts. Maybe from the angle you're looking at, you can't see the shifts. So when I show you the shades from a different angle, you're gonna see that this isn't just one shade, but as you can see, it's not matching these. So definitely not a dupe. Let's also do Excellence, which is kind of a holographic shade from Copacetic, but I think you can already see that it has a very prominent purple shift, so it's not going to be a dupe. But it does have that teal shift at this end, and it does have some magenta shifts. Also from my angle, I see gold. So it is very similar to some of these shades. It's just not the same shifts from the same angle. And then it has a very prominent purple shift that these other ones don't have. And the last one we're going to test is Climbing Vine from Cleona. Again, this is not a dupe, and I'm swatching it to show that to you all. Beautiful shade. Purple going into magenta, going into teal. Not the same texture even as some of these that are much more creamy. Beautiful shade, is just not a dupe. Now looking at the same shades from the same angle in dimmer light. Here are the swatches in direct and brighter light. And here are the swatches from a different angle. Beauties, if you enjoyed this video and you watched it this far, don't forget to subscribe and give a thumbs up before leaving. Also, if there is a particular single you want me to find dupes for next, write it in the comments below. Have an amazing day, and until next time, bye!